Welcome. My name is Linda McKeever, and I'm president of the board of the Manchester Community Library. When we sat in rooms a couple of years ago and we conceived this place, we saw it as a community center. And in the last 15 months, we've seen it really transform our community. And it's events like this, the transgender program we had last week, the diversity of the programming in this place, it is just amazing. And we thank all of you for participating and coming out on these, crazy nights. We do want to make a pitch. For those of you who are Manchester residents, we need you to support us at the polls on Tuesday. We've asked for a 5% increase in our budget this year, and we know things are tough and tight out there, but we run a really tight ship. We don't charge for our programming, we don't charge for a lot of things, and we need your help and support to make this place keep going on nights like this. Thank you so much. Enjoy the evening.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for coming out tonight, and a special thanks to the library for hosting this great event. My name is Kathleen James. I'm the executive director of the International Skiing History Association, which is based right here in Manchester. Surprise. I'm also the editor of Aisha's bi-monthly journal, which is called Skiing History. In 1948, Otto Schneebs, who at that time was the most famous ski instructor in the country, said that skiing is not a sport, it's a way of life. I've believed that since I was a little girl when my family would drive across the Great Plains from our home in Nebraska to take annual ski trips in the Rocky Mountains. I spent a week every winter in places like Aspen and Vail and Steamboat, and to me it was magic. I will never forget those early trips when I became much more than someone who skied. I became a skier. If you know what I'm talking about, then I hope that you'll check out the International Skiing History Association. We're a 501c3 nonprofit founded in the early 1990s with more than 1,800 members around the world. Our membership includes famous Olympians like Jean-Claude Killy, the late Stein Eriksen, Nancy Green Rain, Penny Patou, and Billy Kidd. It also includes many ski industry and resort leaders, authors and historians, and people all across North America and Europe who simply love skiing, like me, and are interested in its fascinating history. Aisha has 3 goals. Every year we hold a banquet in a different ski town, and we present awards to the year's best ski history books and films. This year we'll be in Aspen in early April during Skiing History Week in partnership with the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame. We also publish a website, skiinghistory.org. It's the world's largest online resource for information about skiing history. And finally, but most importantly, we publish Skiing History magazine. It's a great magazine, if I do say so myself. We send it to our members 6 times a year. I brought some copies. They're sitting up here. I handed a few out. Feel free to take one and give it a read. Every issue is packed with interesting articles, and every article is reviewed for accuracy by a board of knowledgeable ski historians. Which brings me to skiing history contributor and Aisha editorial review board member, Jeremy Davis. Hang on. Jeremy Davis is a passionate skier who has enjoyed exploring skiing history from the moment he learned how to ski. A 2000 graduate from Lyndon State College in Vermont, he's an operations manager and meteorologist at Weather Routing Inc. in Glens Falls, New York, where he provides professional weather forecasts to marine clients worldwide. Jeremy has served on the board of directors of the New England Ski Museum since 2000. His website, the New England Northeast Lost Ski Areas Project, www.nelsap.org, has been in operation since 1998, and in 2009 won the prestigious Cyber Award for Best Ski History Website from the International Skiing History Association. He's the author of 4 books: Lost Ski Areas of the White Mountains, published in 2008, Lost Ski Areas of Southern Vermont, 2010, Lost Ski Areas of the Southern Adirondacks in 2012, and Lost Ski Areas of the Northern Adirondacks, 2014, with the last two books winning the prestigious Skate Award from the International Skiing History Association. As I mentioned, he's on our editorial review board, and he's a frequent contributor to our magazine. Jeremy is a member of Ski Venture in Glenville, New York, one of the oldest surviving ski clubs that still operates a rope-tow-only ski area. He lives just outside the Adirondacks near Saratoga Springs. I am so happy he's here. He is a great guy to work with. He knows everything. Jeremy Davis.
Thanks, guys. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. This is a huge crowd. I think we're thinking 130 or 140 people are here. So I'm very impressed that you came out on a rainy night and to learn about some lost ski areas. So really, thank you very much for coming. And Kathleen, thanks for inviting me, and Aisha for hosting, and the library here as well. I think this is a beautiful room, and I think the community should be proud that you have such a nice spot up here to have talks. So I'll be talking to you about lost ski areas of southern Vermont here today, showing you lots of pictures, kind of chronicling the history of all these different places, talk to you about how these ski areas developed across Vermont, and before and after pictures. And I'm sure some of you are going to remember quite a lot of these. So before I start, how many people here are skiers? Okay, I figured you probably have a lot of them here. By the way, this winter, I am a meteorologist. I had nothing to do with the lack of snow this winter either. So. And as a marine meteorologist, we had nothing to do with that cruise ship that had all the problems off the East Coast either last month. So we'll try next year to get some better snowfall out there for you. We did so well last year with cold and snow, almost too much cold. And this year is a complete 100% opposite. And boy, did the snow totals this year just did not add up, and nor did we get much cold weather either. So it's certainly been a very tough winter for the ski industry out there. So we know a lot of you here are skiers. How many of you here have skied at former ski areas, at lost ski areas? Pretty good amount here too. So you'll probably recognize some of the ones that you used to ski at in this presentation, and hopefully learn a little bit more as well. So starting off here, this is a great cover from a postcard collection showing Snow Valley just outside here. I think it's a great shot showing the Tbar, the Alpine lift, 2,500 feet long. And we're going to talk about Snow Valley a lot. So I'm figuring that a lot of you, if there's going to be an area that you're going to know about, it's going to be Snow Valley here, very close to Manchester. So we'll talk to you a little bit about what a lost ski area is, what the definition is of a lost ski area. I'll talk to you about Lost Ski Areas of Southern Vermont, the book itself. I'll do a little timeline of ski area development and the loss of these ski areas. I'll talk about what happens when areas are abandoned. A little gallery of lost areas in southern Vermont, surviving small ski areas that kind of harken back to the days of classic ski areas, and some concluding thoughts as well. And then at the end, we'll have some questions. And if you want to share some of the stories about these places that you might have grown up at, have a funny story or even a correction, we'll be happy to take your questions. And then we'll be doing a book signing after as well. I do have my books available here if you are interested. So what is a lost ski area? Well, by lost, I mean it doesn't mean we can't find it. What does it mean? It's just totally disappeared. But by lost, I'm talking about that it's no longer being used as a functional alpine ski area. So some of these areas, people backcountry ski. They hike up and ski down. Some of these areas, people still hike and enjoy them. Some of them are used for other purposes. But what I'm talking about is that the lifts no longer operate in terms of skiing capacity. Some of these areas never charged for skiing, so we didn't set it that they had to, people had to pay a certain fee to ski them or buy a lift ticket. Some of these are very small community areas, and a few of them were private ski areas that people had behind their homes as well. There's quite a lot of those rope tows that were behind people's houses that they just had for their family and friends, for instance. This is a tow here called Alex's Tow in Woodford, Vermont. This is Route 9 through here. This ended up becoming part of Prospect Mountain, which is to the east of Bennington. So a little background about my website. How many people here have been to NELSAP by any chance? All right, I'd like to see that too. That's my website on Lost Ski Areas. It's a free website. We have a history of over 700 ski areas on the website, so you can check them all out there. Feel free to go on there, submit pictures, Tell me your stories, we'll get them up on the website. And it's a website, again, dedicated to preserving the history of lost ski areas throughout New England and the Northeast. Again, we have over 700, which is pretty remarkable when you think about it. New England itself has about 650, and then I have some from some of the mid-Atlantic states on there as well. There's probably as many as 2,000 across the United States. So there's a huge amount of ski areas that have closed, as opposed to the ones that are still open. These are the 4 books that have been published on lost ski areas in the Northeast. There's also been 3 books that have been published, 2 in Colorado and 1 in California, on lost ski areas that were done by other authors in the same format as that through our History Press publisher. So if you are from that area, you go out west at all, those are some great books as well. And yeah, 2008 was the White Mountains, 2010 Southern Vermont, which we're talking about tonight. 2012 Southern Adirondacks, 2 years later Northern, and as of 2 months ago I just got approval and have started writing Lost Skiers of the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts. So trying to do a nice circle of where I live. Trying to make it as easy, close to researching as possible. It's hard to do a book, for instance, when you live in New York about Lost Skiers of Maine, for instance. It's a long drive to go up to Fort Kent, Maine from Saratoga Springs, New York. So maybe someday we'll get to that area. But those are the 4 covers, and I think it's really cool, the artwork on these old brochures. The old brochures certainly had a really nice style to them as well, and we'll show some of those brochures here coming up. So Southern Vermont, the book was approved by the publisher in 2009, published the following summer. It's the first book that covered lost ski areas in Vermont, and it's now in its 4th printing, which is pretty exciting as well. In the book, we have 60 lost ski areas, and of course, once the book comes out, then we find out there's a few more. It always ends up happening. So there's more resources have become available even since I published the book. A lot more newspapers have become digitized. You can look at the PDFs of those, be able to search keywords like ski tow plus Manchester and find out all the articles that ever had that. Makes life a lot easier than the old days when you had to go through the microfilms and microfiches and hopefully you'd find something. There's 160 pages in the book, 180 pictures and trail maps. I also talk about hybrid areas and survivor areas. By hybrid areas, those are areas that are kind of still in use but don't have a lift. That would be like Prospect Mountain, east of Bennington there, which is still used for cross-country. And the cross-country trails cut through this former alpine area, and you got to pay a trail pass to get to it, but there's no lifts running. So you kind of see it's somewhere in between. And I also give some directions to accessible areas if people want to try to hike up and ski down these as well. There's the book. There's the cover of it. Look here, right at the top. We've got Manchester right on top. Like this brochure here from Snow Valley, you can really see the 2 skiers with the tracks. That's pretty cool. Got Dutch Hill, Burrington Hill, the Ski Bowl, which I'll tell you a little bit about that one. That's over by Bellows Falls, and Timber Ridge, which we'll talk about here as well. That's also a kind of a hybrid area that's gotten some more recent use recently here. So what kind of sources do I use for the book? I used interviews with ski area operators, employees, family members, guidebooks, brochures and postcards, email submissions, magazines, newspaper articles, visiting lost ski areas, because of course it's important to go and visualize what they look like. We took a look at the different ski museums. New England and Vermont ski museums both have great resources available. Lots of pictures and brochures and articles on there. And libraries, you did some research down at the Bennington Public Library and other libraries as well. So there's all these resources together to try to put the stories of these places together. And then where is Southern Vermont, right? Because that's another question. That if I give everybody a map here and said, draw Southern Vermont, you're all going to come up with something slightly different. So what I chose to do is to do the southern 4 counties. It was a nice cutoff. Rather than trying to do like Route 4, for instance, or to pick from one town to another town, I decided to do the southern 4 counties. So Rutland, Windsor, Bennington, and Windham counties are in this book. Now, in southern Vermont, if you can believe it, 74 ski areas once operated, the ones that are still open and the ones that have closed. That's a huge number, isn't it? That's a lot more than what a lot of people would think, that there were 74 ski areas. And today, 17 of these operate fully, and 7 of them are these hybrid areas that are half open, half closed, or being used for other purposes. They range from small rope tows up to medium-sized resorts, and skiers were lost in all decades from the 30s into the 2000s. So losing a ski area, having a ski area closed is nothing new. It certainly accelerated in the 70s and 80s, but ski areas closed before World War II as well, after only operating for 1 season, and in some cases for only operating for 1 weekend. So there are plenty of those areas that literally ran for hours instead of years. So they opened up at the wrong time. Some of them opened up, just before Pearl Harbor. There's all sorts of things that were happening for some of these areas that came in existence for very brief moments of time. So a little timeline of ski area development in southern Vermont, focusing on former ski areas. The first rope tow, for instance, was actually not in Vermont. It was in Shawbridge, Quebec in 1932, but the first United States ski lift wasn't. It was in Woodstock, Vermont, 1934. And that's a picture of the white covered skiway here. So this is the first ski lift in Vermont that's here. There were some actual efforts to try to actually reopen this for a couple special occasions in the last few years over in Woodstock as well. And a recreation of the tow that was there still stands on the hill, and there's a nice plaque that kind of commemorates that just a few miles north of Woodstock. Before that had happened, we had non-lift serve skiing really exploded in the 20s and 30s. CCC, the Sylvan Conservation Corps, other local groups cut ski trails throughout all the mountains in Vermont, and Vermont was boasting dozens or even hundreds of miles of alpine and cross-country ski trails without lifts prior to the first lift coming in 1934. As we head into the 1930s and 1940s, we had rope tows starting to sprout up throughout all of southern Vermont. Once people realized that they could not have to hike up all day long, and they could make more than one run, and they could start making 10, 20,000 vertical feet on a rope tow a day, that really spread pretty quickly, and before you know it, you had tows that were sprouting up everywhere. So there's an example, too, of this area being important, of course, with some of the J-Bar, some of the first major ski lifts that came pretty quickly, and that's Mount Aeolus in East Dorset, showing the J-Bar right here. I believe that's 7A down in there. That ski lift actually got moved over to Bromley once that closed. Of course, Bromley, founded by Fred Pabst, he had a whole chain of ski areas at one time. There was a ski area in Lake George that had a J-Bar. That got moved over to Bromley. He had a J-Bar over in Intervale in New Hampshire. That was moved over to Bromley. So Bromley was pretty much founded with the ski lifts from lost ski areas. And this was right around World War II and a little bit after that as well. 1940s and 1950s, this is when we started seeing some mid-sized ski areas start to develop, some of the ones that became lost, like Dutch Hill. Anybody here ever ski Dutch Hill? A few people? Yep. That was a really nice compact ski area, a lot of difficult terrain, had a vertical drop of less than 600 feet, and had a Tbar that's up here.
That's Piper Creek.
Nope, that's Dutch Hill. Yep, that's Dutch Hill, yep. And it's Hartwellville. It's just north of North Adams, Massachusetts, pretty much right over the border by about a mile or so.
Part of the town of Reedsboro.
Reedsboro, yep. And the good thing about that area, I'll tell you a little bit later on, is that it's now part of the Green Mountain Forest, and you can go up and hike and backcountry ski. And there's a couple of groups that have been getting together that are trying to petition to be able to clear a couple trails to do some backcountry skiing and keep the slopes open, which is good for biodiversity, actually, to have these high elevation meadows and then have people be able to enjoy them in the winter, which could actually be a nice win-win. There won't be any lifts there, but people can get out and get some backcountry skiing in, and it also helps out for wildlife, too. We also saw a lot of community ski areas develop at that time. In the 40s and 50s, a lot of the small towns started developing lots of different places.
Were they included in your 74 small?
Yes, that show would be in there. Yep, yep. And as we head into the 1960s, this is when we started seeing kind of the peak of opening ski areas. I call it peak ski area. You've heard of peak oil before, peak housing market, right? I call it peak ski area. And it's the time when you had everything kind of working well. In the 60s, you had the baby boomer population coming up, all the large families learning how to ski, family trips. The interstate highway system was just getting going. You didn't have the other type of tourist distractions nationwide like Disney World yet. Other things that people could do later on in the 70s and 80s when you can hop on a plane during your winter vacation and not stay local. And one of those areas that opened up was called Birdseye, which is near Castleton. And that's a picture of Birdseye. And this was an interesting lift here because it looks like a pommel lift, and it kind of was, but it was a homemade pommel lift. There was only a few of these ever made. Bill Jenkins, who just passed away, was one of the designers of this lift. And what was neat about this one, as opposed to the regular pommel lifts that were solid metal, this one had a flexible rubber tubing on it. So it was very comfortable riding up over bumps, very, very smooth to do that. When I hiked and explored this back in the early 2000s, this was all woods, and this lift here was in the middle of the woods, and those tubes, some of the trees had kind of grown around those tubes for the lift, which was pretty amazing. So you'd see the lift stuck and grown into some of these smaller trees that had sprouted up. This area faced west, so it got a lot of warm sunshine. You can see them trying to shovel snow to keep the muddy lift line from closing here. Yeah, they did. That's right. Bird's Eye did have some great hang gliding up there. Exactly. Yep. A lot of good thermals up there from the valley below. So, 1970s. This is when we started seeing areas close. Insurance rates were skyrocketing. You had the energy crisis, the gas lines, gas shortages, and I really there was almost too many ski areas and not enough skiers at that point. So then, one by one, a lot of the smaller ones started closing, and community habits started to change. Some of these small ones that could be run by a group of volunteers or a small group of locals. People got busier, things started happening, and people didn't have as much time to dedicate to some of these volunteer ski areas. And there was, of course, increased expenses in poor snow years like we have today, this year. Now this picture here is the Green Mountain College area. This was the smallest ski area to ever operate in Vermont. And the vertical drop here was 31 feet, 7 3/4 inches. You know you're squeezing out vertical when you measure it in 1/4 of an inch for your vertical. Now the cool thing about this was for the Green Mountain College students that would be able to enjoy the slopes here. This is part of their athletic program. And Bill Jenkins there taught these classes for decades. And it was a great place to learn because the students could go literally outside their dorm room and go skiing. He also designed this hill, which was mounded up from dirt. They just, whatever kind of dirt and fill they could get up there. It was designed to have a beginner, intermediate, and expert slope, and it had 4 lifts on it, too. So here's your beginner slope. You start to get towards your intermediates, and then over here, there's your expert drop, which was pretty cool. So, it had one of those platter lifts that he had designed over at Bird's Eye, but a smaller version of it. There's a neat picture in the book. It was actually almost like a ground level surface lift where the cable was down here, not like a ponytail, but it swung out and you rode up it like that. And of course you'd be at the top in about 15 seconds. So, yeah.
Can you tell about how he dragged the kids with the Jeep? That was so funny.
Yeah, they would drag some of the kids with she was asking about how Bill Jenkins would teach the kids for the Jeep. But as far as I remember, he would have a little tow line behind the Jeep and be able to pull the students to get them some speed because you couldn't get a lot of speed going down the slope either here. So it's pretty cool. That mound of dirt is still there. If you go to Green Mountain College, you'll see it. It's still there. It's been kind of excavated a little bit. They had a lot of parties and concerts on it now, but that dirt pile is still there. 1980s, the rate of closing areas tended to slow down. We lost so many in the 70s that by the 80s it was a lot slower. We had several mid-sized areas that started to close during this time, nearby Snow Valley, Hogback, Dutch Hill were some of the ones that had closed. And I think they had a big impact. People really loved these areas. And if you went to a lot of the small places, these were family mountains, you knew everybody, and the loss of them tended to hit people that skied there pretty hard and the families that operated them as well. And by this time, most of the last of the rope tow ski areas started to close, as rope tows became really obsolete by then. Although, there are still a few that are operating. I'll talk about that here coming up. What's that? Miss Snow Valley, yep. I can imagine. Snow Valley, that's one of my favorite lost areas to enjoy reading about and to research as well. And was actually able to get a chance to ski it a couple times in the 2000s by just doing some backcountry on it, which was kind of neat. And it just looked like a really nice mountain.
They've kept the trails open, haven't they?
Yeah, there's been some plans with Snow Valley to redevelop it as a private mountain and put some homes up there. Plans have been kind of off and on for the last 15 years, so we'll see if someday if that ends up happening. Yep. Hogback, that was another one of the last of the family areas to close. It's pretty good size. You'll see this on Route 9 here between Brattleboro and Mount Snow. It had a pommel lift over here, rope tow, and 3 Tbars. These 2 Tbars over here are still standing. And I'll talk about this too a little bit later. But Hogback is a great example of an area that closed, became abandoned, then the community got together and has made it now part of the Hogback conservation area. And you can hike up in there and enjoy outdoor recreation, and it's perfect because the ski area still gets used, not as a ski area, although some people can go backcountry through there, but it's getting used for wildlife study, for hikers. It's really a neat place, and it's very easy to get to, and something you can check out for an hour as well. 1990s, by this time, most of the lost areas in my book had closed. Some areas like Ascutney and Magic had closed but then reopened during this period of time. Sonnenberg, which is over near Woodstock as well, I don't know what that's about. I still see it on my screen. Let's see. There we go. So ski ghosts. Sonnenberg decided that they were going to try to get some buzz by having the most expensive ski ticket in the country for their 300 feet of vertical and one pommel lift. They had a whole story about it, and it was at that time, I think it was only going to be $50, and this was in 1988, 89, but it would include a bottle of wine, so there you go. But they said they were trying to be more expensive than Vail to make it more exclusive. And that's a picture of Sonnenberg here in the background. Of course, open ski areas really invested heavily during this time in the 80s and 90s, fast lifts, new snowmaking, new grooming, and skiing today is very different than it was 40 or 50 years ago. But if you can enjoy a big mountain in the middle of the week and get all those runs in, and it's an amazing experience when you can get a lot of that in. It's a very different product than the small ski areas, but both can work together. The small ski areas are needed to help feed to the big areas. So that's what's important, why you want to still be able to have the smaller ski areas still in operation. 2000s, we have some areas kind of coming back, like Timber Ridge came back, where it was restored there by the owners and cleared out, and looks like you just put a lift up here and you could go out and enjoy it. Just a few community ski areas are left. I'll show you some pictures of a couple that are left in southern Vermont. Again, major ski areas continue to make investments, and a lot of the lost areas really started to fade away into the forest and undergrowth. 2010s, we had Ascutney close. That was after the book came out. The high-speed quad was sold over to Crotchet Mountain in New Hampshire, which was interesting because Crotchet was a lost ski area at one time, and that came back. Bear Creek Club, which used to be the Brown Top ski area south of Killington, has been kind of in limbo. They've been open, they've been closed. And Haystack is now reopened as the Hermitage, but it's mainly for either town residents there or for people that are staying there on their properties or have invested into that. So that's an area that's kind of inaccessible for most of the public, but it is still running. And this is Mount Ascutney, which was really the largest ski area to close in Vermont and stay closed for as long as it did. But the good news about Mount Ascutney is it's come back, and it came back this year in a very different format, but perhaps in one that's going to be a little more sustainable for them. In 2015, 2016, this year, Mount Ascutney Outdoors came together to help to reopen the ski area there. Now, all the chairlifts but one have been sold off. The Trust for Public Land got involved, transferred the property of the town of West Windsor. People in the town had voted to approve, kind of taking that land and be able to keep it as conservation and recreation land. And the rope tow was constructed in this fall, 2015, using all volunteer labor. And the grand reopening just occurred a few weeks ago, February 6, 2016. This is a great story. This is a made in Vermont story, and I love this kind of stuff. Because this is really good, where the community's lost their ski area, but they're coming back and they're going to try to run it as a nonprofit with one lift now, maybe able to add a surface lift and try to expand the vertical to a few of the trails. They can't go to the summit of the mountain because of the easements on it, but they could eventually have 700 vertical feet again on it. And this will be a good way because it's a great chance for people to learn to ski kind of in a smaller area. So this is a picture of them building the rope tow here. There was a chairlift that had gone up in this spot. So it's one of these few cases where a ski area has kind of gone backwards. There was a triple chair that was here. Now it's replaced by a rope tow. But it's great. It's a whole rebirth going on. Here they are installing the rope tow. All volunteer labor. This is great. This is why volunteerism had fallen at a lot of these small places for many years, which is why they closed. But now people see the benefit of doing this, and it's great. And then here's opening day, just a few weeks ago. On the few days it was snow this winter, right? So they were able to open up, and you can see people enjoying the tow, and they had a good crowd there and a good opening. Now, what happens to ski areas after they close? Well, there's kind of three main fates to these. They can be abandoned and not redeveloped. They can be used for other purposes. Sometimes housing developments are built on the slopes. Or they can be reused for other recreational outdoor activities like at Hogback. So what happens once they're abandoned, once you set that clock, once they're just let go? After a few years, vandals often strike. They're not being secured. Sometimes the lodges get burned down, windows get broken, lifts get vandalized, people steal stuff. If the ski area was in debt, sometimes if the lifts were still valuable, they'll get sold off and reinstalled at other mountains. And pretty quickly, trees and brush start to come in. Now, out west, if you can go to a lost area that closed 50 years ago, and it might look exactly the same today, because the soil is so poor out there, the trees take forever to grow back. But in the east, because of our ample rainfall and quick growth, if you don't mow your lawn for a few weeks, you know what happens. So imagine at a ski area, right? So this is 5 years after closing at Dutch Hill. And at this point, this was the Tbar building here. The lodge was over here. And you could still make your way down those slopes, maybe not with this little bit of snow, but this was that picture I showed you before from that 1960s that we were looking at, showing the Tbar went up right up through here. They never had snowmaking. And in the early 80s, they had widened their narrow trails to these big wide swaths. And when you don't have snowmaking, wide trails don't work as well. The wind blows them off and the sun beats them up. So that also helped hasten the closure of the mountain. So that's 5 years after closing. It's still recognizable, but you can start to see the growth coming in. After 10 to 25 years, trails start to grow in pretty rapidly, except where there's areas of erosion. So that if there's a trail that's been eroded down to bedrock, those typically don't grow back in. Lifts become completely rusted and useless, and skiers can become difficult to locate sometimes. There's the same shot. So that's 15 years. That's only 10 years after that last photo. So you can see that there's the lift line here, that it's right up through here through these trees. And in that picture I had originally, too, from the 60s, these trees were about, this tall. So you can see these spruce trees growing up. But there's the slopes, and it would be much more difficult to make your way down those now, just 15 years after it closed. Notice that the building is gone. That was burned down. They burned that for firefighting practice after it became unusable and it wasn't coming back. So here's 25 years after closing. This is from a distance, but this is the Tbar line right here. There's that wide slope, and there's the other wide slope. So you can see how fast things go away. 25 years and they're gone. Here's 25 years after it closed at Hogback. This was their Tbar bridge. One of the few cases back in the history of skiing where you had a ski trail going underneath the Tbar. That wasn't very common. You don't want to go across this. This bridge is still standing, but most of the wood is now gone. You wouldn't want to try to attempt crossing that. There's the Tbars at Hogback. The twin Tbars all growing in. You see them here. Two side by side. The lift corral was still standing. And here's the West Mountain Inn out in West Arlington, West Mountain. This was lost for 30 years. And the slope is now completely forest. But can any of you see the remnant that you can see in that picture? See it? Rope tow? See the rope? Right there. They're made of synthetics rather than modern tows, so they don't rot. They're not made out of like cotton or anything like that. So or whatever natural fibers. So they're just pretty much made out of plastic composites, and they don't really rot. So there it is. There's the tow still there. Some areas become partially restored sometimes, and they kind of go back to nature too, like Snow Valley. This is an example of Snow Valley after it had been cleared when the developers there in 2005, 2004 were trying to clear it out. A lot of people kind of wondered what was happening over there, or they're skiing over at Bromley and looked down and said, what's that over there? It's pretty interesting. And you can see Bromley here in the picture. There's Bromley. Now, does that look like a perfect ski day or what? All right, why don't we just transplant that to this year? So we got permission from the developers there to have a NELSAP ski day. So we had our own private ski area for the day to hike up and ski down. And that was about 2.5 feet of powder, no ice, no layers of frozen stuff underneath it. That was pure powder. It's about 28 degrees, full sun, and no wind. It's just fantastic. And it was really neat to be able to ski trails that hadn't been skied in a very long time and have it actually look like a ski trail, not trying to poke your way through brush or anything like that. Other areas become conservation land. Again, I told you about Hogback. There's some of the practice slope there as it's growing in. And you can go to their website, hogback.org, and check out their trail map on there for hiking trails. So now we're going to talk a little bit, I'm going to show you some gallery of some lost ski areas here as well. Kind of show you some different ones from around the region, show you some before and after pictures. That's that Ski Bowl Inc. that I talked to you about. And some of these areas you're going to know right off the bat. Others of these areas are going to be completely new to you and you've probably never heard of them before. So I hope you'll learn about some of the different ones that were out there. Ski Bowl Inc. It was really in a natural ski bowl in a big little amphitheater where you skied from like the parking lot, actually at the top of a hill, and you went down, and then there was a nice big open bowl. And you can see the ski trail, the ski tow right here. There's a sign here that says ski back to your car. There was a trail that went down that way. You park down in here, and off this picture, there was a sign that said, whatever you do, don't drive up the top of the hill. And it was narrow, it was steep, and they had their own shuttle bus with chains on it, which I'll show you. But that was, what's that?
What town?
Yeah, this was over in Bellows Falls. Yeah, the town. So this is over in Bellows Falls. 1,000-foot tow, several trails in the woods, nice little ski hut and lodge. And yeah, you wouldn't want to go up that road. I've actually been up there, and yeah, you wouldn't want to be driving up that in the wintertime. You'd be slipping and sliding, and plus it's only one lane wide, so that's not good either. There's their shuttle. So when we look at ski shuttles that we have now at the major mountains, they were doing that back 60 years ago as well. And so you'll see all the skis, put them on the back of the shuttle bus. You see the chains on the tires here? Let everybody get back up there. There's a little aerial view of the slopes, taken from an airplane, not a drone. Kind of looking up at the lift line here, there's the ski hut, some of the wide open slopes. Kind of looks like a nice little area. This is now totally grown in. It's all forest over there. Starting to ride up the rope tow. This is the inside of the lodge. And let's see. Yeah, there's the inside here. And what's cool about this picture is you see the wood stove, which is pretty much just a barrel they had cut open. They're inside enjoying warming up. Well, we found the barrel. There's the barrel. I mean, how many times has it been shot up? It's rusted away. But this is kind of neat when you find these remnants in the woods. So anybody just walking through there is just a barrel, but we know that it was the wood stove that was at a ski lodge. And sure enough, right where this was taken, you could actually see the foundation and the flat area where the lodge had once stood 60 years ago. This is Maple Valley. A lot of you might know about Maple Valley. That was one that hung on for a long time in West Dummerston. And that was a good-sized ski area. It was a nice mid-sized ski area. I got the chance to ski it back in '93, I think, on our trip that we're taking up to Ascutney, actually, with my family. And it had 2 chairlifts here, had a Tbar. All these lifts are still standing. You can still go right past it today and look at it from the roadway at least. A lot of nice, interesting trails. Perfect mix, a couple black diamonds, intermediates, green circles. We like this trail here that kind of cut underneath the chairlift. If anybody remembers that one, it was a nice, narrow, twisty run that kind of went back and forth under the lift line. It was really kind of an interesting way to come down. And this mountain closed in 1999. There's been some efforts and tried to reopen it. The lodge is still there. It's still fairly intact, but the lifts are probably now shot because they haven't been used in, well, now 16, 17 years. And there's one of the chairlifts, kind of on a foggy, misty day like today. And you kind of wonder who was the last person to ride the lift, and the safety bar is still up. This is Pinetop in South Vernon, Vermont. This is pretty much Vermont's southeasternmost ski area. And it was at a place called Stonehurst, which is still there. There's a furniture company that's there now. And this was a place, a few of these mountains in Vermont, the ski areas, where people could go in at an inn, and it was all inclusive. So they could go there, they could get their lodging, their food, and their ski instruction and their skiing, day and night. This one had night skiing as well, and kind of stay at all one spot. So these were some of your first resorts that were developing. Sugarbush, but not the Sugarbush with one word, the Sugarbush with 2 words. This was in East Jamaica, Vermont, not too far from Stratton. They had a couple rope tows there. This is the 4 Maple Slope Sugarbush ski area in East Jamaica. It was an interesting story about this one is that back in, there was a day that they were skiing there, and they noticed that the house across the street was having a chimney fire. So all the skiers immediately did whatever they could to get snow in buckets or whatever they could scoop it together before the fire department could arrive and try to help put out the fire, which they did. They put out the fire through throwing all the snow on it and everything. And they went back to skiing. Just a regular day at a ski area, right? There's another nice shot of it looking down the trails. It looks like a really nice shot. Nice little glades, small amount of glades, some scattered trees. Really a nice small private ski area where people could also stay at the lodge and enjoy the slopes. This is looking up the rope tow. Here showing the toe going up to the trees. Right there. And the end of the expert trail at Sugarbush. and it's out again. And it's back on. Latch Inn Hotel in Brattleboro. Yep, they had a ski tow. Up here, they had a jump as well. Nice wide open slope with some scattered trees. Right now, 91 goes right up through here. So when you go on the highway, you're pretty much going very close to it. And there's a shopping center that's down here too. I think a supermarket is down here right now. But this is one that's completely, you wouldn't even know it's there nowadays. Barrington Hill in Winningham, Vermont. This is one of those, one of those platter lifts I was telling you about, those lower level ones that weren't the ponytoes. See how they're riding it? It swings over, and it comes down. There's very, very few of these made. But Bill Jenkins was one of the inventors and developers of it, and this served this mountain pretty nicely because it only had a vertical of 170 feet. It was pretty small. But it also had a swimming pool that it advertised, but that was only for people staying there during the summer, and they kind of had advertised it was a swimming pool that was available year-round, which it wasn't. Someone from my website told me that as a kid they had gone up there, they're all excited they were going to go to the pool, and they went outside and it was more like a skating rink than a swimming pool. High Pond in Brandon, Hubbardton. It's on High Pond Road. This was another classic small ski area. It's as they call it, the ideal family ski area. This little slogan here says, "We're not the biggest, but we're one of the best." And they tried to offer a good variety of trails here. And they had a platter lift at one point, and then eventually they replaced that with a Tbar. They had a rope tow as well on this side. In your classic, kind of parallel trails, about 6, 7, 8 trails coming down from the top, vertical of about 300, 350 feet. One of people from my website, after this had closed officially in the 80s, but he'd gone there in the late 90s to go and explore it, and he went to the bottom of the Tbar. And just for the fun of it, he pushed the on button on the Tbar, thinking, this place is abandoned, just for the fun of it, I'm going to push on. Well, sure enough, there it goes. He's trying to find the off button to turn it off. That was a really interesting thing where the owners there must have been maintaining the property enough to have power to still go to that lift. But there was certainly no maintenance going on, so that was kind of fascinating. You don't really see that very often, to have a lift that's been abandoned that still has power like a decade later. Usually the cords get cut or it's just disconnected, so. And of course they had a great summer grooming program, have the cows out there, fertilize the lifts and keep the grass down. Now this is a quintessential Vermont scene, isn't it? Got the cows on the ski slope during the summer months. This is the Tbar back about 7, 8 years ago. You can see the lift in here, barely. And if you look closely, you see the Tbar hanging on the cable. That's the one that got turned on. This is about 10 years after that. But now trees have fallen onto the lift line, so the cables have gotten knocked down. So this is Bird's Eye, which I showed you before, the guy shoveling the snow onto the lift line. So there's Bird's Eye. They had night skiing as well. They had a couple of those platter lifts, one here, and they had put in a Tbar up here. And they did all this expansion without putting in much snowmaking. And this is not a part of Vermont that gets a lot of snow. Castleton is not a big snow center in Vermont. So this was kind of a rare day when there was plenty of snow. But a lot of times their snowfall there can be only about 50 inches a year because they got shadowed by a lot of the bigger storms. So if they had had snowmaking, they could have expanded, and there were plans to develop this whole mountain up here. This is very, very steep terrain. This is Route 4A right here. If you go on Route 4, you go right past this. Again, they had hang gliding there as well. They had a summer campground after the ski area closed. Some of the remnants of that campground and the pool are still there.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Do you know the story that Bill Jenkins couldn't convince his partners to install the snowmaking in the Castle
Yes.
River? They had plenty of water.
Yes.
Right there.
Yeah, he's asking about if, for the owner there, Bill Jenkins, and his board with the stockholders there, trying to convince him to put in snowmaking. He wanted the manager, Bill Jenkins, desperately wanted to put in snowmaking. He said that snowmaking was the way to go. This is the 60s where, a lot of times it was still hard to convince people that in Vermont that snowmaking is a good idea, because not every season is going to be snow-filled. And they'd had some good snow years, but he knew that there was going to be the potential for some dry years. They decided instead to expand the mountain and put that other Tbar lift in and boost their vertical up instead of putting the snowmaking in first. They would have had plenty of water. There's a swamp there too. They could have made a snowmaking pond, but alas, it didn't happen, and the area closed a short time later. So, and there's the top of that platter lift. and this was it in 2003. You see the same tower here. So you see how fast things go away once they're stopped being maintained. Hyde Manor in Sudbury. Has anybody seen Hyde Manor before? It's kind of like a haunted house now. Yeah, it's really gothic looking and falling apart, and it's a big resort there. They had like a bowling alley at one point, and ballroom dancing, and there's the houses. Let's see. Yeah, you only catch a little glimpse of it up in here. But this was like the flattest ski area. I know that Castleton at the Green Mountain College there, that was certainly one of the small verticals. This wasn't very far after. It's about 40 feet or so. And this is like the cameraman tilting the camera up too. I've looked at this field from the road here looking down. You wonder how you could even make one turn on that. You'd be lucky if you're going straight down in a tuck to be barely moving. So this is definitely tilted up a little bit.
My grandparents spent their honeymoon trip in that manor.
Oh, they did? Okay. Yeah.
During the summer, though, they played golf across the road.
Sure, yeah. And it was
The golf course.
very popular. It was a very popular ski area. I mean, as a resort it was. The ski area part was not, but for a time it was really the place. People would go up there for 1 or 2 weeks at a time, back when those long vacations were a lot more common. And as those kind of fell out of favor in the 70s, that's what happened to the area and ended up closing. This is Apple Hill in Chittenden. This is Mountaintop Inn. Anybody cross-country skis up there. So there's Mountaintop Inn right here. They had actually several ski trails, alpine, that are in there. And you can hike down and explore them. And what's interesting is this was a Tbar here, and it was a portable Tbar with 162 feet of vertical. Again, they're measuring it in single numbers to kind of get as much as they can out of it. And the story behind that Tbar was that it was from Abercrombie & Fitch. Not the clothing store, but back when it was a outdoor supply company. And they had used that Tbar in the glaciers down in South America to show off all their ski gear that they had. And it was a portable tow. I mean, you could pretty much set it up in, even though it was a Tbar, you could set it up within a day or two. Because it was pretty much almost just like pipes for the towers. Nothing that could really take a lot. It wasn't a very heavy-duty lift. But they could get some people to end up using it on that. So this was an Abercrombie & Fitch Tbar, which is pretty interesting. The Westin ski tow, Morgan Hill. Lyman Orton of the Vermont Country Store sent me these. Kind of a neat shot there, showing the ski area in town here, riding up the tow. This was in operation before World War II until 1955. And this one here, this is the Battenkill Lane rope tow. This was on the Manchester Historical Society Facebook page. This was also one of Fred Papp's areas at the Equinox golf course as well here. It's kind of a nice before and after shot, showing the rope tow here and showing what's left of it today. And that's out of order, but there's the Westin ski tow. What's that?
Maybe we have an idea what hole that was on.
6? Yep. 5? Yep, hole 5. This is going backwards a little bit here. That's the Westin ski tow again here, kind of showing it. This is a place, a lot of the kids, he said that he would just strap his skis on and go across the street and hop on the tow. Those were the days, or if you could just go ahead and just do that, And a lot of times at these places, families drop their kids off, say, have fun, don't worry, and, the owners would either keep an eye on them, or you didn't have to worry, and of course things have now changed substantially, and you don't see that very much anymore. Prospect Mountain, of course, in Woodford here. Now it's used for cross-country, but this is a nice picture of it in operation here, showing tons and tons of snow, which they do get there. They get tons of snow at Prospect in most years. This year, of course, it hasn't happened, but they had about 700 feet of vertical, 2 T-bars, one went 2/3 of the way up, one went to the top. They had about 9 or 10 trails, all named after the Battle of Bennington, which are kind of cool. The Winhall Snowball. Now this one that is the most intriguing and mysterious area that I found. I remember reading an article when I was in college, when I first started this website, that had talked about the history of the ski area, and I don't know what newspaper it was in, and I lost the article, which is unfortunate. But it did talk about how it was built with a J-bar in the 50s, and the son of the founder there, I guess the founder had died in a tragic accident, tried to restart the area in the 70s. Neither of which seemed to have done much, and it's possible that the ski area never actually operated. I never saw it in any listings. However, this is kind of neat. You don't find this often on the 1957 topographic map, but ski lift abandoned. And that's the only time I've ever seen an abandoned ski lift on a topo map from that far back. Here's Snow Valley over here. So you see it's not that far away. It actually had a good vertical of 500 feet. Anybody here remember it by any chance? Yeah? Okay.
You don't see it from Bromley when you were skiing Bromley in the 60s. You could
Yes.
see it, the lift line plus the trail next to it.
Yep. He was talking about you could see it from Bromley, and sure enough, here's a picture showing that. There it is. This is from Bromley, enjoying the sunny slopes there, right? There it is. Wide slope, and then there's a lift. Now, if you look today, you can still make that out, just barely, if you know where to look. Yep.
I went to a square dance in the base lodge about 1970, and I still got the cooler I wanted to throw across.
Okay, very interesting. Yes, yes. Yeah.
It was a big party spot.
Big party spot? Okay. So yeah, it's an interesting little spot. And there's Stratton, by the way, before it was developed, up here. But this looks like a nice day here, sun and all that snow, and go up there, bring a bottle of wine, bottle of beer, go up and enjoy it, right? Now we're going to talk about Snow Valley. A lot of these pictures are from Katie Dillman. She's here tonight, and her father was very much involved in the ski area here as well. This is a great poster. I love this poster here. Winter Holiday, Snow Valley, Manchester, Vermont. And I just love the artwork. You know, isn't that just a great shot? And there's the top of the bull wheel for the Tbar. It's actually still up there. There's Walter Rath, one of the owners, Bunny, and Fritz Dillman, her parents there, sitting on top of the bull wheel up there. There's the trail map, 1942. It was a very large and well-developed ski area back in its time. I mean, it certainly was very advanced to have this place with a Tbar and all these trails so close to Manchester. There's the Tbar here, same one I showed you at the beginning of my talk. Here's the rope tow right here, all the different trails, another rope tow right here, and it really had a nice variety of trails. And I was going to read here. Yeah, it says, safety, speed, and comfort have been contained in the Snow Valley Alpine Lift to make your visit a thrilling experience, usually enjoyed only at a few winter resorts out of reach of the average skier. Yeah, there it goes.
Time-wise, when did this, with relation to Bromley?
It was right around the same time. Right around the same time. So they're very close to each other. Yep. Yep. And it lasted until the early 80s up at Snow Valley. I think it was 84, I think was the last year. And it was one of the few first places that had snow, having a snowboarding as well. They had a few of the early snowboarding competitions at Snow Valley when all the other alpine areas said, no way, we're not having snowboards. So, yep. There's a nice shot looking down the Steeplechase Trail. And that's an expert slope. That's the one that had all the snow on it that we got to ski all 10 years ago. There's the base lodge here, Tbar going up through the woods. There's the Snowman's Rest, which was where the ski school met, and that's the base lodge before the base lodge got expanded. It's a nice shot there. There's a great website called historicaerials.com. And you can go on there, and there's historical aerial imagery that goes way back. If you ever use Google Earth, it can go back almost 20 years, but this stuff goes back much farther. In fact, there's spots in Vermont you can look back to 1940 from aerial photography when it was done with airplanes, when they'd map out to get the topographic maps. And they kept all those photographic prints, and now they're on a website, and you can see them. Now, there's a lot of copyright things on there, so you have to pay if you want to keep it and get those copyrights taken off. But I just wanted to show you here what Snow Valley looked like. And this is 1962. So this is the aerial imagery here. There's the Tbar, steeplechase slope. And you see the trails here are a lot narrower and windy and twisty. Pretty interesting. There's a rope tow with one of the beginner slopes here, and the other rope tow that was in here, which later became the pommel lift. There's a nice shot of it in the early 80s. So it'd be nice to have that as another alternative locally as well, you know, to have that back. I don't think it's going to ever happen, but there's the chairlift that was put in that extended the vertical a little bit here. There's that narrow trail that got wined out a little bit. You can even still see where the old rope tow lift line was here. More trails in the woods. It was really a nice compact ski area back in its day. There's the chairlift at Snow Valley, you know, deep in the woods, and it's probably even more in the woods now. And this picture was taken about 10 years ago, so you can see the chairlift. And again, you wonder who was the last person to ride that lift who lifted the safety bar up after they got off at the top. There's their pommel lift, right there. That was That was taken about 15 years ago when we hiked up and explored it. This pond is now pretty much very much overgrown. There was the bottom of the Pommerlift once they had cleared out the whole base area when they were trying to redevelop it there in the mid-2000s. See all the pommes still there? Really rusted out. There's the lodge. Lodge burned down a few years ago. I think it was vandalized and it was torched. So there's nothing left of the lodge now but a foundation, and that's it. But as you can see in this one here, all the windows were all broken, and it was really starting to fall apart. But it was built well, so even though it had been abandoned for almost 20 years, it was still standing. A lot of heavy-duty construction in there, handmade construction, a lot of heavy beams that was able to keep it, even though it was completely exposed to the elements. There's that summit bill wheel that I showed you that everybody was standing on at the top. That's still in the top building, which is still there. If you're at Bromley and you have binoculars, you can see it. It's still visible. You wonder how much longer is this going to be hanging from the ceiling. The gully, this is one of these hybrid areas. This is part of Suicide 6 now. I got a collection of photos from somebody, and they were all burned. They'd had a fire at their house. You see the burn marks. But they had saved the photos, and they were like, we need to identify where this place is. And I was looking at it, and I'm like, it looks like a toe. It looks definitely New England. And then it just going through different areas, was able to find out that it was the gully, which was one of the first rope tows in that area of Woodstock. It was one of those very fast tows. This is one that I think went dozens of miles an hour up to the top. You grab on, you're hauling up the top. And which was neat about this picture, the before and after shot. This was taken 10 years ago, but see the hill here? Same hill, that same dip. See that? You can see the slope here, this angle, that angle right there. But you can look at how the Vermont landscape changes just in the background. Much more open slopes back in the 20s and 30s and 40s that have now all become forested. It's kind of funny how Vermont's done that in the last 100 years, Vermont has become much more forested than it was 100 years ago as the farms got abandoned. But it's very interesting to find nice before and after shot. And I realized I was standing in almost the same spot that first picture was taken, which was pretty cool. Round Top in Plymouth, that got reopened as Bear Creek Club in the early 2000s. But Round Top was an alternative closer towards Killington, a bit of an overflow ski area there as well. Had a couple of chairlifts and a Tbar, nice mix of trails, closed in the 80s. And this was it while it was still closed. Chairlift was still standing. This was one of those chairlifts here, if you remember, a couple of those double chairlifts that the safety bars swung over. And you had to lock it, clicked in and locked in. I went on one of those as a kid in Black Mountain in New Hampshire and was terrified because I couldn't get the thing open. It's not like you lift it out. It was really got locked in there. So we finally figured out how to get it off as we got towards the top.
What was the vertical?
Vertical there is about 1,300 feet. That's a substantial vertical drop ever at Round Top. This is looking down the chairlift. So you can see the chairs here, the same chairs here in this picture. This is backtracking in time to the 60s. It's a nice shot there. And there's that same chairlift when I got to ski it in the early 2000s when it was being redeveloped there as Bear Creek Club, which for a brief time was offering almost like trial days there. And midweek, they were open Thursdays and Fridays, and you can get a ski ticket for $40, which included a gourmet lunch. It was a really nice deal. But that's the same towers. The tower here, and the tower here. And this day, you see two people on the chairlift, and that's it. I don't think there was 9 people, 10 people skiing that day. So we got to have the whole mountain to ourselves. And when you're skiing groomed trails at 3:30 in the afternoon, and you can see every track that you made down it all day long, how often do you get to do that, right? Not too often. Now, there are some surviving small ski areas. There's only really 3 small public areas that run in southern Vermont, Mount Scottney now that I told you about, and Living Memorial Park in Brattleboro, and the Rockingham Recreation in Rockingham. So this is Living Memorial Park in Brattleboro. The ski tickets are very expensive. It's $5 for the day, so make sure you bring your wallet for that. They have snowmaking. They have a Tbar. They have lights for night skiing. And it's an easy slope, maybe low intermediate in a couple spots. It's just one wide open trail.
And then during the summer, it's a baseball field.
Exactly. Yep. They take the tees off, and it's a baseball field right at the bottom. And you can see on this side, and there's tubing. See someone tubing over here on that side. It's really a nice little spot. If you got a family coming up and they're beginners and they want to go to a place that's only $5, you can go there. We were there, they were having their sugar on snow party, pickles and the donuts, and it was really a lot of fun. That same day, we went up to Rockingham Recreation, which wasn't too far away, about 20 minutes north. And they had a rope tow here as well. Now, this looks like a powder day, but I'm telling you, it's 50 degrees out. This was new snow from the day before, and you know what happens, 50 degrees and powdery snow, the sticky, heavy, you could barely move down. This is like break your leg kind of snow. When we showed up there, we were disappointed because we had checked ahead of time to see if the tow was going to be operating. And we're walking over there and didn't see anybody. We're like, oh no, I guess we'll just hike up and ski down just to say we were here. And then one of these teenagers came out of the ski hut and said, oh, hi, can I help you guys with something? We're like, yeah, we were hoping to ski, but it looks like no one's running it today. Oh, yeah, well, no one was here, so I turned it off. Hey, it's just $5, give me the money and you can head right up. So we turned a lift on for us, Again, a classic Vermont story, right? That it's only up here that we could have something like that happen. Really fantastic. It was all there's hot chocolate and cookies in the warming hut, help yourself. So really nice. So we got to ski. It was such a heavy, like I said, such a heavy wet snow that 3 or 4 runs was more than enough just to say you did it and move on. So, and of course there's other Vermont surviving small ski areas, Cochrane's. They've had a big investment up there. They've added snowmaking and lights and a Tbar in the last 15 years. Linden Outing Club, Stratford Lions Club, Hardack, which is up in St. Albans area, yep, and Northeast Slopes, East Corinth. There's a small ski area documentary that Tbar Films put out, and you can Google it online and get a copy of it. It's well worth it. It's a 25-minute documentary about small ski areas in Vermont. And if you haven't seen it, I suggest checking it out. The Ski Museum, New England Ski Museum, and the Vermont Ski Museum both have it for sale on their websites. And it's just a really cool documentary about small ski areas and the passion behind it. And I definitely suggest checking that out if you get a chance. So some concluding thoughts before we get to some questions. So we have lost 60 areas. It's affected a little bit of the affordability of skiing for some families that can't necessarily afford a larger mountain and want to stay at a smaller one. Although the larger mountains have done a very good job too of trying to entice people to come back in with very affordable learn to ski packages and stuff like that. The largest impact is some of these smaller community areas that where people learn to ski for an affordable price and was a real community center. But we're seeing a few of those come back now, like I showed you. The number of ski areas has pretty much stabilized, although I'm nervous about this year. I think this year is going to take its toll. This was so bad this year for a lot of the marginal areas that it's going to be very tough for them. So if you get a chance to ski one of the smaller ones this winter and spend some money there, I know they'd appreciate it as well. And the bigger mountains too, of course, they've been hurting. December was such a horrible month for making snow that it really hurt everybody across the board. And there are even some ski areas that have only been open for a few days this year, some of the natural snow mountains, and some of the smaller community ones as well. So this has been a very tough year. And this year is worse than anything we've ever really had. A lot of those other years we didn't have as much snow, it was cold at least. So some skiers could make snow. We haven't even had the cold really either.
Not to mention the Nordic areas.
And the Nordic areas, he was asking about, the Nordic areas, if they're not in the higher elevations, they haven't really been operating either. And of course they can operate with less natural snow, but there hasn't even been that, so. We may see a few lost ski areas return in New England. After this year it's going to be a little more doubtful, but you never know. And I say now's the time to preserve these areas. They disappear. People that skied them getting older, and now's the time to keep preserving it, which is the whole goal with these books here. These books were designed to help bring these stories to life, save the pictures, and be able to show that to a large audience so that you can learn about these places, which are fascinating and really were a fabric of Vermont skiing and New England skiing, and try to learn about them and so they don't get forgotten. And again, some of these areas I'm sure you hadn't heard of before tonight, so I hope you learned a few things with that. So preserving areas, again, you can contribute your memories to my website, NELSAP. Just go on there, you find my email address. You can keep sharing memories with your family and friends, support historical societies, keep skiing in small areas and just ski in general. Any place is good. And keep supporting ski museums and ISHA, for instance, which are very good at preserving ski history. So with that, I really appreciate everybody coming, and I hope we can answer some questions. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
What about the increased interest in the more rondelay skis and telemarking? Are they going to these smaller ski areas?
Yes, and I think she was asking about how some of the more backcountry skiing, kind of going off the beaten track and those type of skiers and skiing. I think you will see, once we get some more natural snow, a few of these places, like potentially Dutch Hill, which is really trying to, the volunteers are trying to reopen some kind of trails on that, would all be backcountry. And over at Hogback, you can do it as well. So the thing is about these areas, if they're not kept clear, they grow in so fast and the brush is so thick that it's very difficult to make your way down no matter what kind of equipment you have. The debris, the trees fall onto it. It's not like out west where, again, if a ski area closes, they're wide open for many decades, but, yeah.
You said you had an ice shed day where you guys met up and like skied at Snow Valley?
It was,
Well, on a regular year. How often do you guys do this?
yeah, and so he was asking, well, it's actually, he was asking about do we do some days where we all meet up and do a ski area through my website, NELSAP, actually. So with, for NELSAP, what we do is, I do that on occasion. We have done it more in open areas recently than to go and try to ski some of the abandoned ones because they're just so difficult to ski. But we've done hikes as well. We've done lots of ski area hikes and explorations. I'm going to try to get back into doing more of those as well. We do have a Facebook page too, by the way. It's facebook.com/Lost Ski Areas. Easy to remember. Go on there and you can find out about events on there too, and I'll post lots of pictures. We have that, and we also have snowjournal.com. We have a discussion forum on Snow Journal. If you ever want to get into a discussion about what the best Tbar lift was in New England, go to Snow Journal. Look at a large audience on there, the people that will debate it. We're having a new thread right now where someone's trying to find out how many ski lifts can you ride without going on the same one twice or skiing the same trail twice. So people are trying to figure out on the map how many different combinations could you do where you wouldn't do it twice. But yeah, but definitely check those out, because we do those events. It's kind of, sometimes they're last minute, but we do try to do those events. Yep.
Is there a website where you can find some of these small areas?
There is another website too on New England. It's actually called Small Ski Areas. He was asking about, is there a website for people to go on and find information about some of the small ski areas? My friend Jeremy Clark runs a website called smallskiareas.com. And you can go on that as well. And he's got some good information and pictures on there too. Yep.
And the stories about rope toes, best gloves to wear.
Yes.
Techniques to get on and off in the middle of the rope toe, how to avoid a tumble of someone falling ahead of you.
Yep, and she's asking all about riding rope toes and all the fun involved with rope toes. If on my site, there's lots and lots of stories that people have submitted about riding rope toes, right? If you had lots of problems sometimes with rope toes, first your arms would probably fall off at the end of the day if you weren't used to it. Your gloves would be ruined. Your clothes could be ruined, as I found out when I went to the Northeast Slopes with my nice ski jacket, riding the rope toe, not a good idea. They run that lift at about 15 miles an hour, which doesn't sound like much, but that's really fast. High-speed quads don't go that fast. So it's 15 miles an hour, grab it onto the toe, I get halfway up, and then my gloves are starting to smoke. And then the toe hit my jacket, and I could smell the burning coating on my jacket. My jacket was completely melted on the side of it because of the friction. So yeah, rope toes are, especially with the synthetics, are not very good. But it's definitely a skill how you ride them, holding on to your poles and riding up like that. It's a lost art. But you go to a few places like Northeast Slopes and you see the professionals doing it, and you're like, wow, they go right down. They don't even hesitate for 1 second, and they go right back up on that toe when that's running. Yep. Question?
I just had more of a comment. Prospect, he still maintains the downhill trail.
Yes.
But
Yes.
you have to buy a pass.
Exactly. That's why she was asking about.
Awesome, except for this year.
Except for this year. Yeah, she's talking about Prospect. And Prospect is one of those hybrid areas. Like I said, you have to buy an alpine, you have to buy a cross-country pass. There's no lift, but you can go down the trail. So it's kind of in the middle because there's no lift, but the area is still very much in use. It's still maintained, and it's a beautiful cross-country.
It takes the groomer up to the top, so
Yep.
you could use waxless cross-country skis and kind of ski down some of the alpine trails.
Sure.
So it's really...
Yep. And if anybody wants to take it, if you're there next time, send us a picture too of the slopes. We'll put it up on our site too, because I need a shot of that in the snow. So, which I don't think will be this year, but we'll see. Yep.
It sounds like you kept up abreast pretty good of things happening in Brownsville and Ascutney.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding, and I'm all for what they're doing there,
Mm-hmm.
I think Brownsville realized that the mountains was the economic engine of that town. So to keep it, to still have people coming,
Yes.
take advantage of it,
Yep.
was as much their motivation.
Yes, exactly. He's asking about the motivation to get Mount Ascutney back up and running in some fashion. and about, why the town did it and why the people wanted to get together. Well, first you have the ski area part, which can be used as a nonprofit small ski area where, families can come and it won't be expensive. Or in the case this year, it was free skiing. But the whole area is an economic engine here because now they developed an amazing amount of hiking trails through there and as well as mountain bike trails. So if you'd like to mountain bike, they have a really great extensive amount of mountain bike trails. They're all part of that complex. So it's become a different kind of a four-season area. So while you don't have the commercial alpine ski area experience, there's plenty of outdoor experience, and that's the best possible fate, I think, for a lost area. Still have it used one way or the other for outdoor recreation, because that's great. And the more people that are out biking, hiking, and skiing, the better, right? Get out, get your exercise, get out of your house, get away from the video games, get away from your smartphones, get outside and enjoy it, right? That's a good thing. Yep.
The road tow that opened this year, were they able to use modern technology to make it a better road tow?
I mean, it's pretty much, looking at he's asking about the rope tow at Scottney, pretty much what I've seen from the photos there, to me, it looks like a classic tow, but it has to have all the latest safety equipment, too, to be inspected and be operative. But it's the same concept. It's the same telephone poles, same pulleys on them, the same automobile wheels that they would put up on there as well. It's the same concept, yep. But it might be some easier, operation with the engine, for instance, and some extra safety. What's that? Detachable rope tow? In a way, it's kind of detachable because you get to hold on to it and then let go, right? Yep. Right? You're a temporary attachment to the toe, so, yep.
A great story about Fred Bast and Snow Valley. And one guy had worked for Fred in the safety room. Fred would send him over to Snow Valley every day to count the cars in the parking lot and see who had the most cars. Bun told me he never told Fred the truth. He always fibbed because Fred would get so mad. Snow Valley had more cars.
Yep.
Competition with the Rats boys over there.
Yes. Yeah, they were in pretty good heated competition over there for quite a while. Yep. And you got a ski area that you can almost, you can almost walk to the two of them. Almost. I mean, you can, but it's just a little bit of a distance, but sure. Yep.
I guess I have a question about Snow Valley. Do you know anything about, because the Appalachian Trail corridor is really close to it?
Yes.
Do you know I have a map of that, but do you know anything about?
The trail kind of, she's asking about the Appalachian. Yes.
And the Vast Trail goes.
Yes. She's asking about the Vast Trail and the Appalachian Trail, which go by very close. As far as I know, when I've hiked up there, the Appalachian Trail does not actually cross any of the ski trails, but it's very close. I think it's within 1/10 or 2/10 of a mile on the side.
I think if it were to be redeveloped, there's something where they have to
Yes.
notify the Park Service and all of that.
Yep. And if they do reopen it too, the Vast Trail, they were going to actually move it over to move it a little bit off the property, or right along the edge of the property or grandfathered in. So they were still going to try to keep those going, as just to be able to keep those in use. Yep. Okay. Well, after I invite you all to come over to the table, and if you're interested, I am doing a book signing. Shameless plug, but come up and talk. And thank you very much. Thank you.